so hopefully that was some fruitful conversation. It's interesting to reflect on some of those things. A lot of them were from when I was younger. Your perspective makes you think things are far more important than they actually are. One illustration, I thought it was such a big deal to go to Disneyland and to drive a little car with a little steering wheel at Autopia. I was so excited. Now I would not get on that ride if you paid me because I have a car that is way better. It actually steers. It actually goes, right? Like these things were such a big deal, but you're like, oh wait, this is such a small, pale comparison to the real thing. It's on a track. I don't have the control that I think that I have. All of a sudden your perspective changes and you start realizing, oh, this isn't a big deal, right? I remember there was one thing, I was so stupid, but you guys remember the show Rugrats? You guys probably remember it. Yeah. So Rugrats was like one of the best shows in the 90s when I was growing up, and it was so good. And they decided this whole thing, they were going to create a movie called Rugrats All Grown Up. And it was like fast forwarding into the future. And it was the first time, they ended up making a show, but there was like Rugrats All Grown Up, the movie. And the way they advertised this thing, it was like, the one time we're ever going to show it, we're never going to show it again. Don't miss it. Make sure you're here Saturday, this time. If you don't see it, you're never going to see it. Like that's how they advertised it, or at least in my mind, that's how they advertised it, right? So we were like so excited. We were so stoked. We were ready. And then my mom's like, by the way, we have something to go to. You're not going to be able to watch it. And we're like, no! We were like freaking out. And we're like, okay, like my dad's a nerd. Like he's got like the VHS. Okay, we're going to record it. We're going to record it, right? So we set it to record. We were so excited. We came back home and it didn't work. I don't know. Like with VHSs, you never know if it's going to work or not, right? Like we tried to set the timer. Who knows, right? So we tried to record it and it just didn't work. And we were devastated. Turns out marketing is a lie. And they played it every single day for the next year and a half, and it did not matter whatsoever, right? But from my limited perspective, it seemed like such a heartbreak. It seemed like, oh, dude, it's the end of the world. Like, we missed it. We missed our chance. And meanwhile, it's like, no, dude, like, first of all, even if you did, it's a stupid movie. Like, it's a cartoon. Like, it's going to be fine. But we didn't understand enough to know how it all works, how market, like, we didn't understand the perspective behind it, right? I feel similarly about video games. I've always enjoyed video games, but never really on my own. That was more my brother's thing. Like I would always do it socially, like with friends and stuff. I have not turned on a video game console in quite some time. I don't care about it as much. It's fun, it's entertaining, but like even the apps on my phone, I got to a point where I'm like, this is adding nothing to my life. Like this is just nothing. So I would just delete it. It doesn't make sense, right? Your perspective changes. Marvel movies. Like I used to be the person who like not the Friday it came out, like you went to the Thursday midnight showing to make sure you could see it. Like I was so excited, I wanted to be there, wanted to see it right away. I could care less now. Like I don't know if it's just getting older, more mature, whatever. Like I haven't seen I think the last like 3 Marvel movies. It's not as big a deal to me anymore. There's things that are more important. Like marriage, family, work, you guys. Like there's so many things that are more important than those things that used to hold all my affection, all my attention, right? So I tell you this because what we're getting into today is that things that seem so important, often as you get older and wiser or you get some perspective, they start to matter less and less and less. The trivial things start to move down the list. And today's message is money and marriage, or another way to put it, worldly distractions. Which you might not be expecting to hear because God does say things about money and God does say things about marriage, and yet compared to the perspective of eternity, they're worldly distractions versus heavenly realities. Now, God still has something to say about how we ought to spend our money and how we ought to operate in marriage, but when he's asked questions from people who are actually trying to trap him, he's going to say, listen, don't get so caught up in these things that you miss the big picture. You miss the big point of what's going on. So in our passages, Jesus talks about money and marriage and gives us perspective to see these things through the lens of eternity. Not to ignore them, not to pretend they don't exist, but to actually see them rightly with the perspective of eternity. Does that make sense? All right, so with that, we're going to read our text today. Does anybody want to volunteer since this is a nice, intimate setting in here? We got Matthew 22, 15 through 33. If not, I can read it. Okay, I'll read it. All right. So Matthew 22, 15 through 33, we're using the English Standard Version, ESV, if you want to follow along. It says, "Then the Pharisees went and plotted how to entangle him in his words. And they sent their disciples to him, along with the Herodians, saying, "Teacher, we know that you are true and teach the way of God truthfully. And you don't care about anyone's opinion, for you are not swayed by appearances." You see how they're so slimy? "Tell us then what you think. Is it lawful to pay taxes to Caesar or not?" But Jesus, aware of their malice, said, "Why do you put me to the test, you hypocrites? Show me the coin and the tax." And they brought him a denarius. And Jesus said to him, "Whose likeness and inscription is on this?" They said, "Caesar's." And he said to him, "Therefore render to Caesar the things that are Caesar's, and render to God the things that are God's." And when they heard it, they marveled, and they left him and went away. So we're going to continue on that second passage, but let's just break down a little bit more here, because there's some words there that I think we read, and because we've been in the church for a while, we might not think are weird, but like, do you guys know what a Herodian is? Like, those words are just in there. So like, why is this such a big deal? How are they trying to trap Jesus? Like, when you actually pause, isn't that a fair question? Like, Jesus, should we pay taxes or not? Right? Especially when you understand that the debate of the time was, listen, Rome was unjustly occupying the Jewish territory. They were forced to pay taxes to the Roman government, but some of the Jews said, man, we only serve God. Like Yahweh is our God. Why should we pay taxes to Caesar? He thinks of himself as God. Like, why should we pay taxes to a guy who is actually a false God? And you can see it's a real question, right? And yet the way that they're asking it seems to have a little bit of something to it, right? So, first of all, you had these Jewish people who are saying it's not lawful to pay taxes, and if he says it is lawful, then we're going to call him a heretic, right? But just in case he said it is lawful to pay taxes, they brought along the IRS, right? So the Herodians were the ones who wants to see Herod like high and lifted up. They wanted to see Herod establish the political power of the king. So they went and found their enemy, and they united together to try and take down Jesus. So it's literally like coming to Jesus and bringing the IRS and be like, "Hey, Jesus, did you pay your taxes? Should we pay our taxes?" I don't know. They'll get mad at you if you say yes, but they'll get mad at you if you say no. So you're trapped here, Jesus. And Jesus is always like, "Well, no, I'm not," because truth is truth. And Jesus, once again, they were right in what they said. Clearly, you're not swayed by appearance. You're not swayed by public opinion. You're going to tell the truth regardless. They thought his answer would actually lead to him being crucified, but it wasn't. What was his answer? Whose face is on this coin? Give to Caesar what is Caesar's. Give to God what is God's. So his point wasn't, don't pay your taxes. And his point wasn't, pay your taxes and be a patriot. No, like it wasn't. Like he literally just said, listen, worldly distractions, heavenly realities. Man, you might use money here, but you know God's not waiting for your money to accomplish his work in this world, right? Like, you know, God works more than just in dollars and cents. You know, he actually works in provision. Like, God doesn't have to give you $1 million. God can give you food and a roof and friends and family and comfort and support. Like, God can provide so many other ways than just this coin stamped with someone's face on it. Sometimes he does work through that. Absolutely, sure. But he's saying, don't get so caught up in these worldly things. Like, they're not the same. There's the kingdom of God and there's the kingdom of man. Give to Caesar what's Caesar's, but give to God what is God's. So if God has called you to give it. Right? He's showing the difference between these things. He's showing your perspective is off. The very question that you ask, the very fact that you think that this is something that can take God off his throne, the trivial thing of paying taxes, it's foolishness. Clearly you don't understand the kingdom of heaven. And I think Matthew right after this includes this second passage that in a lot of ways is similar. It's a similar idea around marriage where they're asking a question, but they're not really asking the question. They're, as often they do, trying to trap Jesus in his words. They're asking a question behind the question. See, their words might be correct, and what they're asking for might even be fair, right? Like, should we pay taxes, right? And what this question that we're going to see in a second, it's a fair question. But it's very clear to see their heart is not to get an answer to the question. Their heart is to try and trap Jesus. Their heart is to get what they're really after. It says in verse 23, that same day Sadducees came to him who say that there is no resurrection. So these Sadducees believe that there is no resurrection. You die, you're dead, right? And they asked him a question, saying, "Teacher, Moses," who was obviously held in high regard, said, if a man dies having no children, his brother must marry the widow and raise up offspring for his brother. Now, this is true, right? This was a law given to the Jewish people. This was actually a means of grace, because at a time when your care, your provision, your survival depended on having a husband for that, you're saying, listen, don't leave her high and dry. Like, there's a family responsibility to take on and care for this wife, right? This was like a law given as a means of grace. So they take this law and they said, okay, so if Teacher, if a man dies leaving no children, his brother must marry the widow and raise up offspring for his brother. Now there were 7 brothers among us. The first married and died, and having no offspring left to his wife, his brother, and having no offspring left his wife to his brother. So to the second and the third, down to the 7th. After all of them, the woman died. In the resurrection, therefore, of the 7, whose wife will she be? For they all had her. But Jesus answered them, you are wrong, because you know neither the Scriptures nor the power of God. For in the resurrection they neither marry nor are given in marriage, but are like angels in heaven. And as for the resurrection of the dead, have you not read what was said to you by God? I am the God of Abraham, and the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob. He is not the God of the dead, but of the living. And when the crowd heard it, they were astonished at his teaching. So you have these people trying to get Jesus to agree with them that there is no resurrection. And they use this convoluted, made-up story of, okay, so let's say there was 7 in a row, and they all died. Well, what now, Jesus? See, there's no resurrection, right? It's like that kid who asks, could God make a rock so big that he couldn't move it? It's a nonsense question, right? It's a stupid question. It's an error in logic. You're asking stupid questions because you're trying to trap God versus trying to seek what is true. You think from your limited perspective, somehow you're going to understand things better than the God who made you and your brain, every cell, every atom, every planet, every star, every concept of physics in the universe. You see, the very question in itself did not start from a place to actually know. It started from a place to try and get Jesus to agree with them. And that's often the temptation with a lot of sermons. When you prepare a sermon, you want to say what you want to say. I want them to do what I want them to do. I want to benefit from this, so let me try and use God or use Scripture to get what I want. And to be honest, religion has done that often. And it's heartbreaking. Religion has been used to control and to manipulate. Because it's not really about truth. It's not really about God. It's about, once again, getting what you want. And this was happening back in Jesus' day as well. You see, the question, though, that is asked, it actually does present some things for us, and Jesus actually answers it in a way that reveals a little bit more about heaven. And if we're honest, when we read it, especially some of us who are married, happily married, some of us who are married, it might beg the question, like, wait, so there's no marriage? So I got married, but I'm not going to have my wife in heaven? I'm not going to have my husband in heaven, right? Like, those are legitimate questions. That's not the question they were asking. And yet it's a question that Jesus addresses in here. And part of the reason why I wanted you guys to walk through remembering that you had things that felt like the end of the world, but with some perspective were no big deal, is because when we read passages like this, it's easy. Like, trust me, I want Kate to be my wife in heaven. But I also understand that I have a very limited, But I also understand that I have a very limited perspective. And I also understand the same God who created me, who created Kate, who brought us together, who created such a beautiful thing in our relationship. He's the God who created everything, and he's the one in charge of taking care of things in heaven. So I might not know what it'll look like, but I trust that it'll be good. So I'm not going to try and put my perspective, my framing, my thoughts of how I think it should be on God, because I trust that his ways are higher than my ways. His thoughts are higher than my thoughts. So when you understand this passage, you start seeing, once again, these are worldly systems. They are worldly things. They have a purpose. They have a place. Money has a place. Like we have to pay rent, right? Like, money has a place here. And yet God doesn't just work in money. We were not made for money. We were made for eternity with God. So if we start making things like money and marriage ultimate, as good as marriage can become an idol in your relationship with God. If I start putting Kate above obedience to God, she's an idol in my life. And before we started dating, one of our main things was to say, hey, God has to be more important than me. God has to be more important than me. He's going to be more important than you. Like, we talked about, God comes first. Like, God has to be first. Like, if you have to choose between me and God, you choose God. Like, that was the foundation of our relationship going into marriage. We wanted that to be the case. Because when I let Kate down, when she lets me down, and I have to go to God, that is what I want. Because if I'm putting all my hope and trust in her, she cannot handle it. If she's putting all her hope and trust in me, a fallen, broken, sinful man, I cannot handle it, and she will be disappointed constantly. But if I know that she gets everything that she needs from God, and I can come alongside and point her to God, and she can come alongside and point me to God, that's where you see that growth. That's where you see life. That's where you see kingdom realities versus just worldly distractions. So we see this all being fleshed out. And I love the error that he points out. Jesus says, error 1, you don't know the Scriptures. You don't know the scriptures. The resurrection is real. That's pretty clear. So clearly the fact that you're part of this group that thinks there is no resurrection and then you're trying to get me to agree with you, you don't know the scriptures. You also don't know that this law that you're trying to manipulate and turn into some legalistic, twisty, who's married to who, like that was actually a means of grace for you guys. Because of these worldly systems that you created, right? Like he says the same thing about divorce. He says, listen, divorce was given as a mercy because of the hardness of your hearts in that, but it was never meant from the beginning to be that way. God did not intend for these relationships to be together, apart, together, apart. Like God's beautiful, sinless design is that you would have people that continue to commit to one another. But there's things in this world like unfaithfulness, adultery, abuse. Like there's heartbreaking realities in this world. I mean, I know God grieves those things, and yet what he's pointing us to is, man, there's a day where all that's going to go away. If you think you're sad because marriage isn't going to be there, look at how messy marriage gets here with sin involved. Imagine what God is going to do without sin. Imagine what kind of relationships God is going to do without sin. Imagine the closeness that you have. Imagine the joy that you'll be able to have. Imagine the celebration you'll be able to have with one another without sin and pride and everything getting in the way. It's everything as it was intended to be. Without this knowledge of good and evil and us trying to be the arbiter of truth, with just trusting that God's way is best. He says, error number 2, you don't know the power of God. You don't know the power of God to create a more meaningful world than you know. An illustration I came up with is evidence that you don't understand what Disneyland is if someone says, hey, we're going to Disneyland, and your first question is like, what color are the tiles in the bathroom? Right? Like, it's a legitimate question. Like, there's probably an answer to that question. Like, certain tiles are pink and blue, right? But like, if someone says, hey, we're going to Disneyland, what color are the tiles in the bathroom? Okay, your question makes me wonder if you know what Disneyland is. Let's flesh this out a little bit. Like, do you know where we're going? Do you know what Disneyland's all about? Like, do you know what we're going to do, right? Your very question reflects that you don't understand what it's going to be. And I think their question reflects that they don't understand what heaven's going to be. They're just expecting like a little bit cleaner earth, right? Like, he's like, no, you have no understanding. If that's your question, if you're worried about who's going to be married to who, you don't understand that heaven is being in the presence of God. That God is what, like all those desires that you want to fill in relationships or with substances or with overeating, like all the desires that you want to fill with these things were meant to be fulfilled in God. So in heaven, you're going to be in the presence of God, fully fulfilled by everything who he is, in his presence. So man, sometimes our questions reveal that we might have a misunderstanding about who God is and what kingdom realities look like. So after all this, hopefully we have a decent understanding of the passage. So I prepped today's sermon a little bit different. So we've gone through the passage, we have an understanding. Now what are we going to take away, right? How are you going to walk out this door and not have all this just go in one ear, out the other? Well, I have some takeaway points for you, right? So one of the first things that I think we can see in here and we can learn from in this is you can't trick God. You can't trick God. We see 2 attempts at people to try and trap God in his words and trip him up and trick him and somehow get him to either give them what they want or ultimately to trap him up and fool him. Throughout the Bible, not only does it tell us that Jesus knew the thoughts and intentions of the heart in passages like this, but numerous times God is defined as the one who searches hearts. I think one of the best examples of this is one of my favorite Psalms, Psalm 139, 1 through 16. David writes, O Lord, you have searched me and know me. You know when I sit down and you know when I rise up. You discern my thoughts from afar. You search out my path and my lying down and are acquainted with all my ways. Even before a word is on my tongue, behold, O Lord, you know it altogether. You hem me in, behind and before, and lay your hand upon me. Such knowledge is too wonderful for me. It is high, I cannot attain it. Where shall I go from your spirit? Or where shall I flee from your presence? If I ascend to heaven, you are there. If I make my bed in Sheol, you are there. If I take the wings of the morning and dwell in the uttermost parts of the sea, even there your hand shall lead me, and your right hand shall hold me. If I say, surely the darkness shall cover me, and the light about me in night, even the darkness is not dark to you. The night is bright as the day, for darkness is as light with you. You formed my inward parts. You knitted me together in my mother's womb. I praise you, for I am fearfully and wonderfully made. Wonderful are your works. My soul knows it very well. My frame was not hidden from you when I was being made in secret, intricately woven in the depths of the earth. Your eyes saw my unformed substance. In your book were written, every one of them, the days that were formed for me, when as yet there was none of them. Man, I think there's a peace that comes from this level of just transparency. Like, I think we might not be foolish enough to try and trap God in his words, but I think sometimes we're not genuine in our prayers. We think that somehow we're going to get away with false motives, and we're going to get away with trying to look prettier than we are and trying to pretty ourselves up. But man, there's a freedom that comes from knowing that God's not buying it, right? Like, you are exposed before God. Like, there's nothing that you can do that he hasn't seen. There's not a place that you can go to hide from him. And yet, what's his response? Condemnation? Guilt? Shame? No. His response is the invitation of salvation. Man, that offer was made to you, broken as you are. Like, you're going to go through some stuff and make some mistakes that are disgusting. Like, we're still going to struggle with sin. And yet God doesn't just see your past up to now and say, okay, as long as you don't sin again, I'll die for you if you want to become a Christian today. No, God sees all of it. Not just the stuff that you say out loud, all the thoughts behind it, all the desire. Like, God sees all the mess. He says, that's what I died for. He says, that's what I want. Like, there's a freedom that comes from knowing you can't out-sin the cross. That God's not going to change his mind about you. That God's not going to offer salvation and say, never mind, you crossed the line. No, God sees it all and says, listen, I want to give you a new heart. Past, present, and future. I want to die for you. Do you know how much rest there is in that? I think walking away from this, knowing that God sees your heart, that you can't trick God, you can't hide from God. Like, if God can be tricked and mocked, he's not a God worth serving. God will not be mocked. God can't be tricked into thinking that you're better than you are. God sees all of it. And I think there's so much peace. There's not, like, I feel like sometimes this gets preached as like a fearful passage, like, God sees everything that you're doing. It's true, but what does the gospel say? The gospel says he sees everything you're doing and he loves you anyway. He made a way for you anyway. He extends the offer of salvation to you anyway, so that you can go from being an enemy of God to a son or daughter of the King. So yes, God sees everything that you're doing, but he loves you in the midst of it. And if you will put on Christ, if you will take on Christ, he doesn't see the mess, he sees the perfection of Jesus. That's the good news of the gospel. Amen. That's why we're here. That's why we're here in a home, meeting and talking about these things. God will not be tricked. So as you go into your prayer life, those of you who are believers and those of you who are not, just know that you can come before God honestly, open. You can come to him with all your fears, all your doubts, all your struggles, all your prayers that you don't really want. Like, I've prayed that so many times. My God, I pray that you would allow me to do all these different things, knowing in the back of my mind, like, man, there's like a sinful self that doesn't really want those things. Like, that sounds like hard work, right? Like, God, help me be the husband I need to be. Help me not to be slothful. Help me not to just turn off my brain. Help me just to stay focused and do what I need to do. And then in the back of my mind, I'm like, that sounds exhausting. Do I really want that, right? Like, but guess what? I lean into that and I say, God, you know all that. God, you know what's best for me. You know the sinful desires of my heart. Get rid of that. God, that's not me. That's what you died for. So be open and transparent and honest in your prayer life and let God transform your heart. Point number 2, don't let worldly concerns distract you from kingdom promises. This is kind of the main purpose of this passage, right? These passages together, do not let worldly concerns distract you from kingdom promises. Luke 12:22. Jesus says, therefore I tell you, do not be anxious about your life, what you will eat, nor your body, what you will put on. For life is more than food, and the body is more than clothing. Consider the ravens, they neither sow nor reap, they have neither storehouse nor barn, yet God feeds them. Of how much more value are you than the birds? And which of you, by being anxious, can add a single hour to your lifespan? If you then are not able to do as small a thing as that, why are you anxious about the rest? Consider the lilies, how they grow. They neither toil nor spin. Yet I tell you, even Solomon in all his glory was not arrayed like one of these. But if God so clothes the grass of the field, which is alive in the field today, and tomorrow is thrown into the oven, how much more will he clothe you, O you of little faith? Do not seek what you are to eat and what you are to drink, nor be worried. For all the nations of the world, they seek after these things, and your Father knows that you need them. Instead, though, Seek his kingdom, and all these things will be added to you. Fear not, little flock, for it is your Father's good pleasure to give you the kingdom. Sell your possessions, give to the needy, do not provide yourself with money bags that do not grow old, with a treasure in heaven that does not fail, where no thief approaches and no moth destroys. For where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. Man, passages like this are just that reminder. These things might be present realities in our world. But man, we can't take it with us. Don't get so caught up in it. If your life is built around the pursuit of these things, you're missing the point. And I'm talking about churches too. I'm not saying every church is perfect. I've known many churches that have idolized either marriage or definitely money. I know so many churches that have made it all about money and feeling like, oh, we're doing it for the kingdom, but really they're doing it just to grow more and more money. They're building their own little empires. Mm-hmm. And of course there's that allure. But God is saying, don't get distracted by these worldly things. It is not treated as something to be ultimate. God is ultimate. Don't let worldly concerns distract you from kingdom promises. And my last point today. God often meets our needs in ways different than we expected. God often meets our needs in ways that we did not expect. I think this last passage when he's talking about marriage, I think that's a genuine grieving that we have. Like, man, marriage isn't going to be in heaven, but this is such a good gift of God. Like, God, you created marriage. God, my marriage has been such an important thing of pointing me back to you, and I've seen you more clearly in marriage and the illustration that you have between Christ and the church. God, how can marriage not be in heaven? Listen, all those needs are going to be met. All those desires, all those joys are going to be fulfilled. Everything that's in there is just going to be fulfilled in a way that you might not expect. And man, the Bible is full of stories like this. It might not be what you expected. I guarantee you Joseph didn't expect that God would use him by throwing him into a pit and having his brothers sell him into slavery. I don't think he was sitting there saying, man, I can't wait to see how God's going to use this. From his perspective, man, your brothers throw you into a pit, you get sold into slavery, you get thrown into prison. How's that going to work out? And yet, what we see a few chapters later is there's a huge famine in the land. And Joseph was able to arise to a position of power to set aside food and provide for that famine for his family. He was actually the reason his family survived. Mm-hmm. All because the story took a turn that he did not expect. Moses had a stutter. That might have been partially an excuse, but I think he probably did have a stutter. And God said, listen, you're going to be my voice to the nations. He's like, no. God, you're not going to use a stutterer. God, that's not what you do. You don't use a stutterer to be your voice to the nations. And God says, oh, yes, I do. It's going to look different than you expect. You see, in your weakness, I made strong. God will oftentimes meet needs differently than we expect. I think there's probably no better example than Jesus. The conquering king. We like to think that if we were alive in Jesus' time, we would all kind of know and be like, oh yeah, I would have recognized him right away. No, they were expecting a warrior king riding on a white stallion to come slay Rome and establish them as the political power, right? And how did Jesus come? How did this conquering king come? As a baby. In a manger. Surrounded by poop. Right? You can clean up the manger scene. There's no poop there, but I'm pretty sure in a stable there was quite a bit of poop. It's a messy situation. Not only then, how did the Savior conquer? With a sword? Did he kill Caesar? Did he kill Herod? No. He conquered by destroying sin and death. He actually died. So from their perspective, you could see how they would say, God, this is not how this is going to happen. God, you said you'd deliver us. And God's like, I did. You just don't see how yet. Man, I could deliver you from a king and there will be another one in a couple years. But to deliver you from death, to deliver you from condemnation and guilt and shame, to take all that up on the cross, that is what you truly need. God meets those needs in a way different than we expected. Man, heaven will be no different. We might not always know the specifics of how God will work, but I can tell you that the same God that created marriage and sex and intimacy and joy and all the things that we enjoy on this earth is the one who created heaven. He's the one in charge of preparing a place for us. The last verse I leave you with is John 14, 1-3. Jesus says, let not your hearts be troubled. Believe in God. Believe also in me. In my Father's house there are many rooms. If it were not so, I would not have told you that I go to prepare a place for you. And if I go to prepare a place for you, I will come again and take you to myself, that where I am, you may be also. There should be great joy and encouragement and hope, knowing that God's got it. I am so glad that I'm not the one in charge of programming in heaven. I'm so glad I'm not. Like, my first response is like, man, there's not going to be marriage? And then I'm like, wait, I don't want to be in charge of this. Like, that's probably what I would do. I would just try and make really good versions of all the things here on earth. And yet God's like, no, I have something better for you. He's making all things new without all our mess getting in the way. So we can trust that he's good. Let's pray. God, I thank you for this time. I thank you for just your word that you have made yourself known to us, God. God, I pray that you would allow us to see you more fully, to love you more fully, and just continue to live our lives in response to what you've done for us. God, allow us to be open and honest before you. We love you and thank you. In your holy, precious name we pray. Amen. Amen.